I'm going to be moving very quickly through this presentation since Barb has asked me to compress what would ordinarily be an hour or longer presentation into just 15 minutes. I'm also going to start with the challenges that NaCCRA is facing, since I think that it will help you to understand the rest of the presentation if you're aware of some of what these challenges are. First, there is a false perception that all NaCCRA regulation must be by individual states with no coordination among the states. That would require that laws for Washington residents would have to be enacted through Olympia without coordination among the several states. As you'll learn later in this presentation, that's not necessarily the case. Second, there is a false perception that national means federal legislation and regulation. And as we move forward through this presentation, I'm going to talk about a mechanism whereby state-level regulation is developed through a national body that gives a stronger result than what we've been able to achieve through congressional action in recent years. There's a lack of qualified leaders with the talent needed to lead NaCCRA, and this is an ongoing problem. Perhaps this is just inherent in the nature of an organization of older people, since for younger people, gaining experience means that they grow in competence. For older people who already have a body of experience, age can bring with it decline and a loss of competency. That's a challenge that we face in NaCCRA and in other organizations that seek to advocate for older Americans. We also have a lack of financial resources which would be sufficient to allow us to have a robust advocacy agenda. Part of it because we don't have the membership that we need. Outside of Washington State, there is a requirement that NaCCRA membership is separate from state association membership, meaning that people have to join two organizations and write two checks to gain access to the national representation that is desirable. And finally, our membership, perhaps as a result of the preceding thoughts, is somewhat inadequate. Only 2,000 out of an estimated 600,000 elder care recipients are NaCCRA members. That's a problem for us. Now we move to the topics that Barb asked me to address. First, what were the outcomes from the NaCCRA meeting which just ended in Indianapolis? Second, how has the Joint Task Force with Leading Age worked out in practice? Has there been any progress made, and where is it going? And finally, what is the vision for advocacy work at the national level, and how would that work in connection with the National Association of Insurance Commissioners? First, very quickly, what were the outcomes from Indianapolis? There was a decision to put advocacy before mechanics. You all are aware of the bylaws controversy that we had recently. It was decided to simply limp along with the existing bylaws and move on to things of more substance for the membership. Second, 4 new directors were appointed. Ruth Walsh and Jack Matheson are past presidents and bring a continuity of organizational memory to the board. Basil Flum is a very distinguished internal auditor, the kind of person who looks at corporate governance to be sure that the organization is operating with integrity, and that's a valuable background for NaCCRA. And finally, Kim Barley of Florida is a retired military officer. The treasurer was absent from the Indianapolis meeting and didn't provide a report, so there was no financial discussion of substance. Finally, there was a decision by the board to include activeagingadvocates.com and Action Fellowship together as NaCCRA brands. You're probably familiar with Active Aging Advocates, but Action Fellowship together is a new initiative that would result in residents helping residents in various ways. It's an attempt to bring together on a national level the kind of community that we all find attractive in our home CCRCs. The entire record of the Indianapolis meeting, including video recordings of all deliberations, are available at the website that I list here on the slide. This is a view of what the website looks like. If you're able to scroll down, you'd see that the recordings are all listed, and the full information, including minutes and all documents considered, are available at that website. Barb wanted me to explain the Joint Task Force with Leading Age, and I list both the provider members and the NaCCRA members here. You can see that Leading Age has brought forward capable leaders, 3 provider level, C-level officers for this purpose. But inaction has been a challenge. We have been proposing conference calls, email exchanges, all sorts of things. And Steve Mogg, who is the primary liaison from Leading Age, has consistently replied that they were too busy for us to do anything. This has become frustrating not only for us, but also for some of the provider members of the task force. I want to protect their confidentiality by not naming them, but we're thinking now possibly of moving forward in a new manner. We would thank Leading Age for having brought us together, but we would start working without facilitation by Leading Age, but just go ahead on our own. And the task force, providers and residents together, is now considering meeting in Northbrook, Illinois, to consider our primary advocacy matter independently of Leading Age. I just mentioned that we have a primary matter, and that is something that NaCCRA has put forward. We thought that we would have the best chance to gain progress and to support our members if we were to focus on a single advocacy objective rather than having a laundry list of many, many things that we wanted to accomplish. And we thought that the most pressing matter was to safeguard residents' entry fee investments from insolvency. So that is what we would focus on. We also had to respond to an email from Steve Mogg, which, and in all fairness, this is supported by many residents who wanted NaCCRA to address a whole laundry list of matters, and I've listed some of them here: Bill of Rights, reforming American healthcare, reforming the tax code, developing a new consumer guide, fair principled accounting for CCRC entry fees, enactment of model laws, addressing the challenge of long-term care needs and costs. The list goes on, and I think you can see that it would be quite comprehensive. It would be nice to have all of these things in place, but we're not yet ready to take on all of that. We believe that it's best to focus on one thing for which we might achieve a breakthrough and begin to win the trust of the providers so that we could work together more effectively with. Barbara also asked for our vision for advocacy work at the national level. And I'm starting here with accounting reform. We've been working behind the scenes, sort of through a back channel, to try to persuade the Financial Accounting Standards Board to adopt fair accounting for entry fee contracts. That has met with some resistance from the providers, as you might imagine. Several providers, perhaps as many as a third, are operating with impaired balance sheets and don't want to have to go through the rehabilitation that might result from more effective accounting standards. Also, today's accounting moves earnings recognition toward the beginning of residency, and that favors the interests of providers who are shorter term over those of residents who are longer term. Also, we have an initiative underway to try to address Revenue Ruling 72-124. For those of you who don't know, Revenue Ruling 72-124 is the ruling that allows CCRCs to operate on a profitable basis, but to continue to have tax exemption. The ruling says that in order to have such tax exemption, they have to meet the three primary needs of aged persons, which include the need for specialized housing, the need for healthcare responsive to the challenges of aging, and the need for financial security, which includes a requirement that the providers keep residents in residency even if their assets are exhausted. We want to add to that requirements that residents be allowed to have input into the decisions that affect them, and that the providers operate with financial solvency. Barbara also asked about the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, which is popularly known as the NAIC. The NAIC allows the states to pool technical resources that no state could afford on its own, and thus it provides a better quality of regulation nationwide. It operates deliberatively in contrast to the special interest politics of Congress. And the NAIC promulgates model laws and model regulations, which are then enacted without change in every jurisdiction. That means that a model law, which was developed by the NAIC, on which the Washington State Insurance Commissioner serves as a member, would go into effect in Washington without the need for further activity in Olympia. Thank you. If there's time for questions, I'll be happy to take your questions.